Hi, folks, it's Mr. MegaManFan. Like, share, comment, subscribe. You know all the things to do. Today on Genesis Does, we are talking about Segapede, or as it was known later in development, Astropede, or as it was known even later in development, we ain't releasing this game, so this is all you're ever gonna get. So, why did this game never come out? Well, thankfully, HiddenPalace.org has some answers, and it starts with the fact that this game was in development by Sega Technical Institute. Yes, the same STI that was responsible for many of your favorite games, including what some consider to be the greatest Sonic game of all time, Sonic the Hedgehog 2. But as they had more and more things on their plate in the early 1990s, they got into a bit of a crunch where they were developing more titles than they could actually release, let alone finish. And at some point, something had to get cut. But we're not to that point yet. First, let's talk about the proposal for Segapede, which thankfully they have concrete evidence of, not only in the form of this prototype, but in actual concept art from one of the people on the development team who goes by the name Craig Stitt. Stitt. So give Stitt his props, because we wouldn't have any of this information, concept art, or this prototype if it wasn't for him. So the game was originally going to be tied in to the Sonic the Hedgehog universe, and the centipede-looking character you're looking at is called Zip, with 2 P's. Now, Zip isn't too much on his own, but the good news is that strewn throughout the levels of Segapede are little pieces of his tail that he can add on. They give him power-ups such as Turbocharge, Scorpion Tail, Pulse Cannon, none of which you really get to see in this prototype, but that was the idea. The more pieces of the tail you could pick up, the more powers you would give Zip. And that's why some of them appear to have spikes, and some of them appear to have flags. They're all different designs because they all represent different things that would have enhanced Zip's abilities. So, the first ever working prototype was done November 22nd, 1993. And I guess they thought this had some merit because at that point, the game was quote-unquote greenlit for further development, which resulted in even more concept art and a team that was now comprised of Craig Stitt, Alex Nino, and Howard Drawson. Nino was a comic book artist who was brought in after previously working for DC and Marvel, and Drawson was the sound designer who had done work on Sonic Spinball and Die Hard Arcade. So this was turning into quite a power team at STI, but time was of the essence with so many projects already in development at that same company, so you will notice that there are assets in this prototype taken, appropriately enough, from the canceled Hidden Palace level of Sonic the Hedgehog, which is where HiddenPalace.org got its name, and it's been a fan speculation for many years as to whether or not Hidden Palace was ever really intended to be in the game, or it was just something that was being worked on at the time. Well, obviously they intended to use it because they reused it when it didn't go into Sonic, and they put it right here in Segapede. But you could also consider that just a placeholder to prove all their concepts worked, like picking up the pieces of the tail, losing them when you get hit, having to shoot enemies shooting back at you, so on and so forth. This was their way to have something other than just a black screen to work with. Although I found something really interesting while I was trying out this prototype. Those giant crystal gems that you see in the Hidden Palace zone that obviously would have been Chaos Emeralds, well, they work like teleporters in this game. When you get close to one and you push the action button, Zip teleports to another part of the stage, which means there are alternate exits that you can leave the stage from. Now, besides what I've told you already, there isn't a whole lot to Segapede. You don't get any kind of reward for clearing the stage. It just takes you right back to the title screen that says, this is a prototype only. You don't have a score on screen that tells you how well you're doing or if you've completed any goals. There's no information. In fact, there's no kind of display overlaid on this whatsoever. You don't have a life bar. You don't have any information. There's just no way to know whether you're doing good or bad other than you die. Like, if you take too many hits, Zip explodes. It's pretty much your only way of losing, and you don't really lose because it just goes right back to the title screen. You win, it goes back. You lose, it goes back. You do nothing, you go back. You hit start, you go back. Yeah, start works like reset in this. So this was very polished and very rough at the same time. And when I say rough, I mean, yeah, they were doing what they could with the assets that they were able to use in the time they had available. But I also mean that when you're scrolling, sometimes the screen is a little jittery. And this is the same whether you're playing it on Analog Mega SG like I am or authentic hardware. Because I play this on a Nomad as well, and the effect is the same. I can play it through emulation on my laptop, and the effect is the same. They hadn't quite gotten the speed of Zip down. Sometimes Zip is moving so fast the screen doesn't keep up, and sometimes the screen is moving fast enough, but it stutters and tears. So they had to polish the scrolling a little bit if this game was ever going to go anywhere. And the platforming, yeah, that's a bit rough. I mean, obviously, because they were originally planning to tie it into the Sonic universe, the idea of going fast was definitely on their minds. I mean, the character is named Zip, after all. But at the same time, there's some very tricky platforming areas where Zip's momentum carries him right past the platforms, and you can't make precise jumps. It is vexing. And I know Vex is the name of another video game, so that was not intended to be a pun. I'm just saying here that you can't do moving super fast and doing super precise platforming at the same time very well. If you're going to do that, you need to have some sort of momentum system where you start out moving slow and pick up speed the further along you go. But Zip, true to his name, goes from 0 to 60 in no time flat. So it's almost like they needed to have one of the action buttons set to like platforming, where you hold down the button and Zip doesn't run, which is counterintuitive, but I'm surprised somebody hasn't tried that. Usually you hold down a button to pick up speed, not to slow down your speed, but in a game like Segapede, you definitely need it. So, sadly, this game was worked on for about 14 months in total before STI said, hey guys, we're working on too many things at too many different sites and we got to pare it down a little bit because we're never going to finish anything with so much going on, and we got to focus our assets on the things that have the best chance of making us money, which was games that did come out like Comic Zone or The Ooze. And if you've seen my video on The Ooze, you already know my thoughts on that. I think Segapede probably would have been the more promising title, but that was not the choice they made. It was like flip a coin, heads or tails, what do we cancel, what do we keep working on? And The Ooze got the cruise, and Segapede had the lose, or Astropede as it was known later in development. So it's unfortunate. I feel like there is potential here. I do like the idea of going around picking up pieces of your tail and those pieces giving you power-ups that give you different abilities to fight the enemies or traverse the levels with. And there are some elements of the stage design that are clever, including the teleporting feature, the walls that are actually not walls if you jump at the right place. They kind of are hidden pathways through. And if the jumping mechanics could have been fine-tuned, then it would have been possible to merge going fast and slow. There are Sonic games that pull this off quite well, Sonic Mania being a good example of that, so it's not impossible. It probably just would have taken more time than the 14 months they had before it got scrapped. But I'd like to say that Craig Stitt did the world a service by saving this one from the scrap heap and giving us all a chance to actually see what Segapede could have been before STI pulled the plug. So if you want to check this out, go to hiddenpalace.org, look for the November 24th, 2022 news update that says Sega Technical Institute's canceled Segapede, and you will find the full news article that I have been talking about here, as well as a link to the actual ROM file. Or you can go to the search bar at the top of hiddenpalace.org and type in Segapede, Segapede. And on the actual page for the ROM, here are the brief notes that I didn't already mention in this overview of the prototype. The concept was pitched September 21st, 1993, after work on Sonic Spinball had finished. First playable version was, as noted, November 22nd. The game was canceled mid-1994 due to the need of having staff work on other projects. The game ROM is from 1994, possibly just before the game was canceled. The first level, which is the only playable one, has music and sound done by Howard Drawson. That was also noted in my previous commentary. The game's first level uses art from Hidden Palace Zone, which was cut from Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Actually, this page mentions most of the things I already mentioned in the video, including the fact that pressing start resets the game. Okay, so there's really not more details on the actual ROM page that you can download it from. But it's free. It's a prototype hosted on hiddenpalace.org, so you don't just have to watch my video. You can download it and play it in an emulator or on a Mega EverDrive Pro or whatever else you like, and decide for yourself if this is a game that should have been finished. And who knows? If history has taught us anything, it's that when prototypes see the light of day, sometimes the original developers come back and work on it. Sometimes the fans pick up the torch and they work on it. You never know what might become of this now that Segapede is out there. And if this is all we get, it's still cool, and I'm glad it exists. I'm Mr. MegaManFan, and as always, thank you for watching.